I think I might have just finally found an arc that tops the final selection arc. It took how long, but yeah, we are talking about what is now my new favorite arc in all of Demon Slayer. And it is coincidentally one of the longest in Demon Slayer, so maybe it has, again, the time advantage that the others didn't. But this is my new favorite arc in the series, and I'm going to tell you why, but that doesn't mean that it's perfect. There's still some problems that we do need to discuss, but I'm just going to say right now, this is an amazing arc, and it utilizes its longer runtime very well. And once again, I have no written review for you, because I've kind of been rushing a little bit to get things done, so unfortunately no written review for this one either, but I'm going to try to have written reviews of all of those arcs that I've reviewed so far up on my social media sooner rather than later. But for tonight, we're just going to run through all the bullet points, and there is a lot to talk about with this one because it's 7 episodes long and there is a ton of things that happen. So let's talk about it, shall we? What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Mr. Station, your source for anything and everything animation, including TV and movies, and especially anime. I am your local anime fanatic, Jackson Small. Welcome back to Slayer-Tember. Let's talk about the next arc in Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, and the longest one that we've looked at so far, the Mount Natagumo arc, where Tanjiro, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and a bunch of others team up against a fabricated family of spider demons, led by one of the most terrifying ones that we've come across so far. Not as terrifying as Muzan, but still pretty ruthless, and there's still a lot to talk about with him. But there is literally 2 full pages full of bullet points, so I don't want to waste any more time. We're going to dive straight into it. I'm going to try to make this more of a generalization and not go too deep into it, because there's a lot to talk about, so let's hit all the main points, shall we? The 3 Slayers are summoned to Mount Natagumo for their next mission. Tanjiro and Inosuke charge ahead, leaving Zenitsu behind to cower, as he always does. They end up finding a high-ranked Slayer, who tells them that his comrades all killed each other. Then to Hashira, Giyu, however you pronounce that, the guy from way back in the very first arc, the one that saved Tanjiro and Nezuko and did not kill Nezuko, and a new Hashira named Shinobu, who you're soon going to realize is one of the most terrifying out of all of them, are sent by the, apologies if I mispronounced this name, the Yubuya Shikis to aid them, the highest up family in the Demon Slayer Corps. Zenitsu, after some skulking, bolts into the mountains out of concern for Nezuko after realizing that Tanjiro took her into the mountain with him. They battle the other Slayers that are being controlled by puppets by the Spider Mother Demon, who is literally using them like marionettes because of her threads. They come face to face with Rui, who vows its mom is going to kill all of them. We're going to talk about Rui later. He is one of the most terrifying demons in the show so far. Inosuke then uses beast-breathing spatial awareness to find this mother demon, which ends episode 15. Yeah, all that in just episode 15. Now we move on to episode 16, where there's somehow even more things happening. The high-ranked Slayer holds off the others, Tanjiro and Inosuke charging ahead to face the Spider Mother. The Spider Mother then cowers in fear, the family revealed to have been abusive of each other. Yeah, unfortunately, I should have gave a heads up, but, yeah, unfortunately, there is, maternal abuse in this episode. Even though it's not technically maternal, as we find out later, but there's domestic abuse. It's never fun having to talk about that, but when a show puts it in there, I have to talk about it because it then ends up playing a big role in the plot. Then, next, Tanjiro ends up fighting a scared female Slayer, who's being controlled by this mother, and her bones and everything is literally bending beyond her human limits just to fight Tanjiro, which is causing her agonizing pain, causing even more controlled Slayers to arise, begging Tanjiro to end their suffering. Then Tanjiro and Inosuke after Tanjiro convinces Inosuke not to kill these other Slayers because it's not their fault what they're doing, they end up throwing the Slayers into the trees, and being in the trees tangles the threads so that the mother can't control them. However, they forget that the mother can still kill them, because angered, the mother spider demon snaps all the controlled Slayers' necks and kills them ruthlessly. Like, literally twists their heads around. It's freaky as hell. Then Tanjiro and Inosuke end up battling a demon without a head, and they do struggle for a bit, but then thanks to teamwork, they do manage to kill it. And then that's when Inosuke, after Tanjiro having tossed him to defeat the other demon, Inosuke decides to show Tanjiro that he can do exactly what he can and do it even better, as he literally yeets Tanjiro into the sky, which at first seems like it's no reason, but then Tanjiro ends up finding the mother demon, and immediately prepares to strike. The mother demon refuses to die at first, but then she realizes that death will free her from her suffering. So, she drops her threads, and she just closes her eyes, welcoming death, as a reprieve from the living hell that she finds herself stuck in. And Tanjiro, seeing that she is letting him kill her, Tanjiro then uses water-breathing blessed rain, so it's a painless death and she doesn't feel anything as her head is severed. Then, as she dies, the mother demon alerts Tanjiro that one of the members of this twisted family is a member of the 12 Kizuki as she dies, which ends episode 16. Which immediately escalates the stakes of the situation, because up to this point, he's only battled Muzan's underlings. He's never battled a Kizuki. And finding out that one of them is part of this twisted family and is not dead yet, yeah, you can definitely tell that scares him. Meanwhile, as we begin episode 17, Zenitsu ends up coming across the other spider son, and finds that he's immediately been poisoned by a bite from the smaller spider he got from earlier. And the spider son reveals that in a matter of moments, the poison will literally turn him into a spider. Even though for some reason these other Slayers that have been turned into spiders still have their human heads. I guess just because it's supposed to be a horror show, I don't know. But yeah, that's freaky. So as he's literally struggling against the poison and still running away like a coward, a flashback ends up revealing that Zenitsu ended up getting his yellow hair because he got struck by lightning. Like, literally struck by lightning. He was up in a tree cowering because his master's training was too hard for him, and he got struck by lightning. Then, after panicking a little bit more, as he always does, Zenitsu then passes out again, which switches him into his warrior personality. He has multiple personality disorder, apparently. It's weird. After lamenting on his past for a bit, and lamenting about how he wants to be a better person, Zenitsu ends up using his thunder breathing and kills the demon. And it's an even cooler kill than his first kill of the tongue demon from the previous arc. Then Zenitsu collapses on top of the house that's being held up by the threads that was the home of the demon that he just killed. And he starts using his thunder breathing again to try to slow down the poison that's coursing through his veins, so he doesn't turn into a spider. Not to mention he took multiple bites from multiple spiders because it ended up dogpiling on top of him before he used his thunder breathing. So it accelerated it a little bit, and then he used the thunder breathing to slow it down again. Then Tanjiro and Inosuke are attacked by the father spider demon after both of them find the daughter spider demon, and Inosuke chases after her. She immediately summons her father, and the father lashes out at them in anger, telling them not to hurt his family, ending episode 17. Then Giyu and Shinobu finally arrive on Mount Natagumo, and splitting up to cover more ground, and slay more demons that way. Or at least that's the way I think they're going about it. They don't really explain it, because it's like a blink and you'll miss it moment. Tanjiro then cuts down a tree to save Inosuke, which traps the father demon underwater for a little bit. And right when it seems like Tanjiro has the perfect ability to use his strongest breathing technique to take this demon down, the demon rises up and uses that tree that Tanjiro used to try to crush him to toss Tanjiro far away, which leads Inosuke to face the Father Demon alone. And Inosuke is already bleeding heavily from his other fights, so yeah, not exactly a very good situation to be in. And then, supposedly, the Father Demon is revealed as the one that's the member of the 12 Kizuki due to his strength, because Tanjiro doesn't realize yet that the only way to know if they're part of the Kizuki is because of the numbering on their eyeballs. How he doesn't know that, I don't know. I thought Tamio told him, but I guess not. Then, while that's going on, Zenitsu is then found by Shinobu, and Tanjiro finds Rui abusing his own sister for failure and because the rest of his family is dying. That's when a random arrogant Slayer comes out of nowhere and tries to kill Rui, only to be immediately cut to pieces by his web, like instantaneously. His entire body just explodes in a giant bunch of chunks of blood and skin. It's gross. It's gross, but it's also awesome. Then, meanwhile, going back to Inosuke, he manages to cut one of the father's arms off after continuously beating down his other sword that's already implanted in his arm with his other blade, which results in a chase because the father begins to panic. Then while that's going on, yeah, there's a lot of time jumping here, please bear with me, Tanjiro battles Rui, refusing to apologize for telling the truth that the entire family is fabricated, and not at all related. Then, going back again, Inosuke ends up feeling fear for the very first time as the father sheds its own skin to grow both bigger and much stronger. And Inosuke accepts his fate because he feels fear for the first time and thinks he's about to die because only one hit will destroy him. That is until memories of both Tanjiro and Hisa, the lady that tended to him back at the sanctuary in the last arc, drive him to keep on fighting. That is until Inosuke's swords break and he's about to die as this demon is literally crushing his head and his giant arm. That is until Giyu arrives, chops his arm off, and saves his life. And then Giyu uses a different water-breathing technique to cut the Father Demon into pieces, which finally kills it off for good. Meanwhile, while that's going on, Tanjiro's battling against Rui. Tanjiro's sword breaks on Rui's webs, ending episode 18. So yeah, we have two Slayers that have had their swords broken. Genuinely shocking, to say the least. Then, after a bit of a spat, Giyu ties Inosuke to a tree because Inosuke refuses to stop fighting because of his injuries. Like, despite his injuries, he wants to keep on fighting. He doesn't want to stop. He wants to keep going. But Giyu sees that he's going to be nothing more than a hindrance and ties him to a tree. Which is pretty funny. And then Giyu also reveals that the Father Demon is not a member of the 12 Kizuki, as Tanjiro had assumed. Then Shinobu, as she gives Zenitsu the cure for the poison, she explains to him that his life flashed before his eyes as she cures him. Something that she admits that she has not had happen to her because she has never been in that situation before. She's never been close enough to death to see life flash before her eyes. Lucky. Then Tanjiro begins to struggle after his sword's broken, overpowered by Rui's might and his very, very strong blood demon art. And right when Tanjiro is about to die, because he can't dodge the threads anymore, that's when Nezuko pops out of the box and saves him narrowly from death, but takes heavy damage from Rui's attack and almost loses her arm in the process. Then the sister comes back and asks Rui what she's supposed to do, and she's clearly getting fearful. But already angered by Tanjiro's bond with Nezuko, the thing that Rui wants that he doesn't have, he ends up slicing his own sister to shreds along with some trees out of anger. However, since the sister is a demon, the sister does recover and runs off to kill more humans, as Rui himself ordered her to do. Okay, now we're on to page 2. Like I said, a lot happens in this arc, so please bear with me. Rui then offers to spare Tanjiro's life in exchange for Nezuko, because he wants that familial connection, which of course Tanjiro naturally refuses to do. And that's when Rui reveals that he is the member of the 12 Kizuki that the Spider Mom had warned him about, which also explains why she was so fearful of him earlier, despite the fact that he was using the dad as a threat. Yeah, it's weird how that works. Rui then puts Nezuko in a very bloody bind up in trees so she can't do any more to help Tanjiro, especially after she literally gets a deep gash into Rui's face. And Rui's plan is to leave Nezuko like this to just bleed out and then burn when the sun comes up, as punishment for, in other words, not obeying him. Yeah, he's one of those controlling types. And then he beats the ever-living crap out of Tanjiro for a few minutes. And then after a little while, Tanjiro manages to use his strongest water-breathing form to cut the threads. That is until Rui uses his full power on the threads and encases him in a death trap. Tanjiro's life then flashes before his eyes, and it's revealed that his family can actually work with fire. And his father used to do this thing called the Hinokami Kagura dance, which would, I guess, help aid in fire spirits. They were very vague with the description. Please excuse me if I'm getting things wrong. And after this flashback, Tanjiro ends up unlocking this Hinokami Kagura as his sword, his broken sword, that's now pretty much nothing but pure water energy, turns into the fire of the Hinokami Kagura, which slices through all the threads and sends Rui backpedaling. With his broken blade now a mighty flame, he chases Rui down at blinding speeds, which leads to some of the best animation in the show so far. Yes, even with the Suzumi Mansion arc taken into account. Then, powered by his determination to save Nezuko, Tanjiro ends up finding Rui's opening thread and goes for the kill. However, he still needs a little bit more propulsion because it is a broken blade, being powered by nothing but just the pure techniques at this point. And that's when Nezuko is awoken from a vision of her mother, and she uses her own blood demon art called Exploding Blood, which frees herself from the trap that really made out of the threads, destroys all the threads that are in front of Tanjiro before they can slice into pieces, and it propels Tanjiro's broken sword, which is finally able to decapitate Rui and end episode 19. Or so it seems. As we then find out in the very next episode that Rui cut his own head off right before this flaming sword could, and is still not dead. And then Tanjiro is about to die from another attack of threads, until Giyu arrives and cuts the threads, saving his life. And then Rui attacks him again, and Giyu uses the 12th form of water breathing called Dead Calm, which immediately neutralizes Rui's attack before it can even touch him. Then, as Rui is left in shock and disbelief, Giyu nonchalantly just decapitates Rui with the most half-efforted swing you can imagine, finally ending him for good, and showing that Giyu is very, very strong, and there's a reason why he's a Hashira. Then, a flashback reveals how Rui controlled and abused his entire fabricated family, including the father, and especially both sisters. There used to be two sisters. And one of the sisters tries to flee, only for the eldest one that's still living at this current time to betray her, resulting in her getting the same treatment as Nezuko, but this time having no blood demon art to save her and dying in the sunlight. And then the still living sister turns full evil as she captures another Slayer and plans to liquidate him and drink his remains. Gross. Showing that this sister is beyond compassion and not worth saving. Then thankfully she's stopped from actually killing the Slayer by Shinobu, who then pins her to the ground. Then this sister lies that she's only killed 5 Slayers, and then Shinobu corrects her because she ended up coming from a different direction and saw all the cocoons where the other Slayers were turned into nothing but mush inside of these cocoons. And Shinobu corrects her to having killed actually 14 of these Slayers. And right as the sister is about to unleash a counterattack out of anger, Shinobu then uses her insect-breathing butterfly dance, yes, we're introduced to another form of breathing in this arc, to inject the sister with poison. Then the sister dies a very painful death because it turns out that this poison is made from hysteria. Hysteria, the flower that was used as a sanctuary during final selection. So instead of just cutting her head off, because Shinobu is one of those Hashira that doesn't have that ability because she doesn't have the strength, she instead poisons her to death and gives her the most agonizing, horrific end humanly possible. Oh, and no sympathy is felt because we don't get any flashbacks with her up to this point, and at this point she's just pure evil. So, this is the first demon where there is zero mercy, and she is not shown any kind of remorse. So the sister dies a very painful death by poison, ending the fabricated spider family off for good. And really, as his head continues to fall to the ground, thinks back to his desire for family, which ends episode 20. And as he dies, Rui remembers his past life of how he killed his family and how he couldn't bear the pain. And how Muzan gave him a bit of a purpose and allowed him into the Kizuki. Which we're not shown how he became a Kizuki, but we do see how he became such a powerful demon. And not to mention how he slowly lost his humanity and what he actually wanted, with the more and more humans that he killed. Rui's body then crawls over to Tanjiro as it's turning into ash, as he ends up grieving for his lost humanity. Tanjiro senses his grief and cries, placing a hand on his back as he dies. And then, Rui's parents greet him in the afterlife, promising to always be with him, no matter if he goes to heaven or to hell. They do a great job humanizing a grand majority of the demons in this show. It's legitimately impressive how great their writing is here. Then Giyu tries to reprimand Tanjiro for his sympathy, once again calling back to their very first meeting when Tanjiro refused to let him kill Nezuko. But once again, he refuses to lose that empathy, which again is what makes Tanjiro such a unique character compared to everyone else in Demon Slayer. Then Shinobu tries to land a sneak attack on Nezuko, and Giyu gets in the way and defends her, showing how much that he's actually grown as a character, and ends up officially breaking the rules of the Demon Slayer Corps, giving an opening for Tanjiro and Nezuko to escape. And Shinobu refuses to actually fight Giyu, so she just chases after them, and then Giyu pursues right after her. And then Tanjiro is knocked out by Kanal. Yes, the female survivor from Final Selection's back, and she knocks out Tanjiro immediately, and then chases Nezuko through the woods. And then Nezuko, in a bit of hilarious dark comedy, ends up turning tiny again just so she can't be cut with the sword. However, we do see later that she is convinced to let herself be taken to the core. Because the arc in this episode ends with everyone being taken to Demon Slayer HQ, and Tanjiro waking up to be confronted by the entire Hashira, which are, if I can remember all their, if I can find all their names here, Giyu, Mitsuri, Albani, Sanemi, Gyomei, Muchiro, Shinobu, Rengoku, and Kocho. Literally confronted by all of them as the episode ends. And yes, this is our introduction to Rengoku. We're gonna learn more and also mourn him when we get to Mugen Train. So that is the entire arc, the longest one of the series so far by a mile. It's 2 episodes longer than Final Selection, and it is still one of the longest in the entire saga. The only beaten by Mugen Train, Entertainment District, and Swordsmith Village. All of those. And also from here on out, no arc is shorter than 5 episodes. And that's only rehabilitation. After that, we get to Mugen Train, which is 8, and a movie. Entertainment District is 9. Swordsmith Village is 10, the longest one in the entire series. And then Hashira Training, the final arc that leads into Infinity Castle, is 8 episodes. So we're starting to get into the longer arcs now. But somehow we were still able to cover all those bullet points in less than a half hour. I'm genuinely surprised, especially considering the fact that it's literally pretty much 2 pages full of these bullet points. So, a lot happens in the arc. We get introduced to one of the 12 Kizuki. We get to see the power of the Kizuki, which is nothing to be trifled with. We meet another Hashira and Shinobu. We get to see more different types of breathing with insect and the introduction of the... what was it called again? The Hinokami Kagura. I gotta remember that name. The Hinokami Kagura. And then we also get great animation, more great voice acting, excellent writing, and more demons getting humanized. Not to mention lots of blood and gory death, and just an all-around really awesome arc, man. My only problem with this arc is that the Spider family as villains, excluding really, kinda suck. Like, the mother I can understand. She was like a little bit of sympathy. And and her surrendering to Tanjiro is definitely a first for the series, as it's the first time a demon's actually surrendered to him. Not to mention Tanjiro giving her a painless death, which is, again, showing that empathy that makes such a huge majority of his character. But the rest of them suck. The father demon was just a big hulking brute that almost killed Inosuke. Outside of that, I'm not going to remember him in T-minus 10 days. The spider son is boring. By far the most boring out of all of them. Like, just a boring character. I had nothing for him. He's boring. And then the sister, while she does end up turning into a full-on malicious, evil son of a bitch at the end of the episode, well, at the end of the arc, they do a great job showing a little bit of sympathy because of how she literally cowered to Rui because Rui saved her life from slayers that were trying to kill her. But still does not redeem the fact that she goes full-on evil bitch by the end of the saga, which then leads to her end, and her getting one of the most painful ends in the entire show. And keep in mind, this is in that same category as Susumaru getting crushed by arms bursting out of her mouth and stomach. Like, somehow it's just as brutal despite it not being as visually gory. That's not to say this show isn't visually gory, though, because there's still plenty of blood, gore, and severance of limbs, and a whole lot of death in this arc. So, overall thoughts? It's a pretty great arc. It's my favorite of the show so far from what I've seen. But the villains, excluding really, kind of suck, which do kind of drag it down a little. But it's still my favorite so far, and I still think that's definitely worth your time if you have not seen it yet. And that is why my final verdict for the Mount Natagumo arc of Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba is going to be a 9.5 out of 10. Yes, it is not a full 10 because the villains suck. Like, if the villains were better, again, excluding Rui. Rui was awesome, but I mean like the rest of them. If the rest of them were given more time and more personality, I could bump it up to a 10 because it's literally the only problem that I have with this arc. The only problem. Because the rest of it is handled so well. Definitely check this one out. It is more than worth your time. Which I think honestly I've said about this entire show so far. I think the lowest I've given to any arc in Demon Slayer so far is an 8. That's impressive. Like, not even Dragon Ball was that consistent. So, now that we're about to reach the half-hour mark of this recording, let's go ahead and end this video. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this almost every single day. Feel free to leave your opinions in the comments on this arc, on this show, on these characters, or if you think these villains are better than I personally think they are. Because that's, again, excluding really, they kind of suck. Like, the mother, I feel sympathy for the mother. The mother had a nice little sense of wanting to be free of suffering. I can understand that. And really was one of the 12 Kizuki, a super powerful opponent and a very complex character for the brief moment that he's here. But the rest of them suck. The sister sucks, the brother sucks, and the son sucks. The other ones are very boring. That is literally the only thing that's keeping me from giving this arc a 10. Literally the only thing. But if you feel differently, feel free to tell me in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I guess until we meet again, I'm Jack Small, this is Animation Station. And I'll see you guys next time when we get into the rehabilitation arc of Demon Slayer. Until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Keep slaying.